Hey, Cobweb Caverns, welcome to the stream, man. How's everything for you this fine weekend? This weekend of the super blue blood red moon. Hey, Big E's, welcome to the stream. Hey, Sharon Gregory, welcome to the stream. How are you guys doing today? I have absolutely no agenda today, so I hope you guys have lots of questions so we have something to talk about. I'll do my random tip, but oh, I'm doing all right, Cobwebs. I'm plugging along. I'll do my random tip, but other than that, I've just gotten. I mean, my fish tanks are doing okay. I need to go get some remineralizer before I can do my next water change. Yeah, Cobwebs, happy Super Bowl weekend. Hey, Corona Ken, welcome to the stream, man. How is everybody's weekend going, and how are you generally? My background today is me feeding these Teleocycla monogrammas. And hey, Jeremy, welcome to the stream. And I'm as willing to talk about TDS meters as anybody. Sharon Gregory wants to know, what do I use for a substrate in my planted tanks? And mainly well, I take that back. I've got moss in my shrimp tanks, and in one of my shrimp tanks, and I've got guppy grass in the other shrimp tank. So I'm not the one to talk to about plants because I have a very brown thumb. I can kill a plant in a heartbeat. But for my wife's planted tanks, and my wife has a very green thumb. She is a botanist and a master gardener. We use Eco Complete. I prefer the black and the Amazon versions. So that's basically the substrate. I like Eco Complete because it continues to pull minerals and elements out of the water and hold them until the plants use them. It doesn't break down like most of the other substrates do. Cobwebs Caverns is asking, my thought and question for everyone then, are angelfish the biggest jerk fish there are? You know, hey, Flynn's Fish Forum, and hey, Joel, Glass Boxes. Hey, Laura, welcome to the stream, guys. Cichlids in general tend to be, depending on the individual, usually are jerks at some point in time, whether it's when they're breeding, whether it's when they're trying to establish a territory. But cichlids in general can be jerks. So angelfish are cichlids, and any fish will tend to bully the smaller fish around it. So like in this 110 gallon that's in the background, when I first set the tank up, all I had in it were pencil fish, reed tetras, and lemon tetras. And the lemon tetras got to be the bullies of the tank. I had about 17 or 18 of them in there, and the lemon tetras were the bullies. So they were the biggest fish in the tank. And so they started exhibiting all kinds of territorial and bullying behavior where they would chase the pencil fish around and chase the reed tetras around. So any fish that is the largest fish in the tank, except for probably plecos, and some fish that just pretty much stay to themselves, any larger catfish that's nocturnal is probably not going to bully, but it sure will eat any of the other fish it can fit in its mouth at nighttime when they're sleeping and it's out moving around. So angelfish are bullies, are known to be obnoxious, and generally jerks. But it depends on which particular fish you're talking about in almost every case. Sergeant Tanks asked me, if I only had $100 to invest into the hobby, how would you use the $100? Sergeant Jeremy, I would probably, if I had no tanks and nothing, if I was starting from scratch, I'd probably try to find a used 55-gallon that had lights and a stand with it, or even without a stand, for, like $50. Or, like Cobwebs is saying, on Craigslist or local newspaper or whatever place I could find, club, hobby forum, that I could find someone selling stuff. And I would probably go for a 55 before I would go for several 20s or several 10s. To start out with, I would try to set up a 55-gallon with that $100 and try to hook and crook some fish that I wanted to put in it after I had it set up and running. Buy a cheap filter, sponge filter, under gravel filter, and an air pump as cheaply as I could get by that I felt like was a solid purchase. And, try to spend $50 on a 50-gallon that already had lights with it. And that's the way I would spend that $100. I'm tempted to say that I would spend it on books and reading material and just keep researching my fish purchases that I wanted to make. But the honest truth is I would probably more likely buy a fish tank, a used setup, and try to shoot for a 55, maybe a 40, maybe if I got lucky a 75, if I could find one cheap. Hey, Kyle's Wild World, welcome to the stream. What's up with Kyle today? I enjoyed your last stream. Video, Kyle. I'll have to go back and make a comment. Cobwebs is saying the price of tanks in the U.S. amazes me, so cheap. Can you really buy a 55-gallon for $50? Yes. I have bought them before for $25, but that was a while ago. So I haven't been in the market lately, although the honest truth is, if you can catch a store going out of business, and if you can catch a hobbyist, a serious hobbyist going out of business, they'd much rather have that $50 than the tank, because they don't need the tank anymore. Or if you can go to a show and catch somebody that's got a setup that's been selling stuff and wants to get out from underneath it, they don't want to carry that 55-gallon away. But Corona Ken's right, you can get them new for 90 to 100. But I probably would not go buy a new 55 if all I had was $100 to spend, because I'd want to save some money for, filters, air pumps, uh, air hose, air stones, that sort of things, the ancillary stuff that goes with setting it up. I'd want to get some dechlor, you know, it's going to get iffy. Yeah, cobwebs, it seems to be really out of balance. I wonder if the price of stuff in the US and the price of stuff in, Europe and England and UK, it seems to be out of bounds, out of balance in the sense that we get, yeah, that's what I was going to say. You say, I guess it's just the numbers available here are smaller. I think that we have a lot more fish stores that start up and go out of business. We have a lot more people that go gangbusters into the hobby and buy 50 tanks and set up a whole room and then lose interest in it and are willing to let it go for pennies on the dollar. We get people that their children say, "Ooh, mommy and daddy, I want to fish." They go out and they buy the 55-gallon and the lights and the stand and the food and everything and buy a bunch of fish and stick them in there without any idea what they're doing. And you can catch those kinds of setups on sale for next to nothing. They sit in the garage for a year gathering dust, and instead of trying to set it up again or learn something about the hobby, the people just sell them off for pennies on the dollar, in the local newspaper or Craigslist or what have you. and that's what I'm thinking. I wonder if it is. Yeah, there's the other side of the coin, Cobwebs. He says one thing that does seem a bit cheaper here is livestock and plants, though, at least compared to aquarium co-op videos I've seen. Yes, that's the balance. You guys pay more for the setup and less for the denizens of the tank, whereas we pay less for the setup and way more. Now, I've heard Corey say things, or someone say things like Americans are cheap, they don't want to spend a lot of money, and so a lot of the fish that are in Europe and Asia, where people are willing to pay a price for them, and once they get them, they start breeding them and disseminating to the rest of the people in the hobby. I think that that's probably why you guys get cheaper. I think the state of the hobby in general is on a much higher level in Europe, Germany, UK, those places. I think that on one hand, that there are more people that are doing deeper work, breeding and studying fish in Europe, whereas on the other hand, in the United States, there's a whole lot more people that are at the middle or high range of hobbyists, and quite a few really great people that have gone into a specific genre of fish, whether it's lorocards, whether it's live bearers. I think that we have a much more specific bunch of people that are dealing with a small, narrow band of the fish hobby. So I think that altogether it balances out between the United States and Europe. And this is purely conjecture on my part, just me from looking and reading and listening. There are great people on both sides of the pond doing yeoman's work, and I in no way mean to denigrate any American hobbyist expert or European hobbyist expert, but I think I have noticed that you guys across the pond seem to get a wider variety of stuff shipped in. I don't know whether it's from Asia or from South America itself, but it seems like there is a larger flow of rarer and specific species going to Europe and Asia than there is to the United States. United States, because of the general stinginess of the American people who value their money greatly, won't pay so much for a fish to get it in and start breeding it, and I'm not trying to cast shade on Americans being cheap. I'm cheap too. I try my best to save money where I think I can. When I'm buying something for my hobby, fish keeping hobby, I try my best to cut costs if it is possible without giving up quality. I want something that's going to last me a long time. And so to me, it is cheaper to spend a little more money to buy something that is very sturdy than it is to pay pennies on the dollar and get some cheap garbage that's going to be broken or thrown out in a couple of months. Laura says, I don't know if it's to do with the price of glass. It may be. There may be more glass manufacturing going on here. Cobweb says, don't know, Laura. I think it's just economics of scale with the equipment, and that's what I tend to believe. And it may be completely wrong. I may have this completely backwards. And Cobweb says, kind of like what I was talking about, a supplier I get stuff from gets stuff wholesale from Germany, the Czech Republic, as well as Thailand. Corona Ken says, sometimes I hear YouTubers quote fish prices and I just don't understand who buys fish for those prices. Locally, southern New Jersey, fish are much more reasonable than in other parts of the country. Ken, I tend to believe that prices are cheaper when you're in an area that has a strong fish keeping contingent in it, with lots of people that are spending the money to ship fish in and then breeding them, and then they've got a ton of them and they're trying to sell them, so they Cobwebs wants to know, can we do a quick comparison with very common fish prices? I'd be willing to do that, but mostly here lately I buy from sure, it's fine with me, Cobwebs. I'd be willing to Corona, I think that's true, that the East Coast has got some really strong fish keeping contingent. And so I think you get breeders, local breeders, that are selling to the fish stores cheaper because they finally managed to get some species breeding. And the truth is, breeding fish, once you get them breeding and you start managing to keep the fry alive, suddenly you've got all these fry on your hands and no real demand for those fish. So then you're willing to sell them off to pet stores for fish food, dechlor. Cobweb says neon tetras are going for 3 pounds here, in 8 for 3 pounds. And what's 3 pounds? $10? 8 for $10? That sounds cheap to me. When I see them in local PetSmarts and the big box stores, I think they're like $3 a piece, which would be like $20 for 8. You might get them a little cheaper. Corona Ken says Cory cats locally are $1.79 for small to $3.59 very large. I guess Corona Ken, it kind of depends on which Cory cats they are, because I know there's Cory cats that you can pay $80 and $90 a piece for, you know, depending on how rare they are. And Corona Ken says that neon tetras are $1 each, 12 for $10. Yeah, that seems cheap to me, Corona Ken, but it may be because I'm looking at my local big box stores, because I haven't been researching those fish to buy online. I tend to feel like fish online are more expensive because you got to pay shipping, but I tend to feel like that I get better stock shopping online, because the people, you know, are trying their best to send you fish that are going to make it alive after being shipped. 12 for $10 all over South Jersey. Well, that seems cheap to me. That seems like a low price to me. I've got to admit, it's been, well, what about lemon tetras? Have you looked at any lemon tetras lately? Because the cheapest I've found them are for like $2 a piece. Hey, Michael Tet, welcome to the stream. Compressiceps? Do you mean African cichlid compressiceps? Maui eye biters? Because those are usually like, lemon tetras go for, yeah, well, see, $2. $2 is about regular price. If I go to one of my big box stores, that's where I get them. I mean, when I get them. My problem is hey, Aquarium Co-op, welcome to the stream, man. I will go to a big box store when my regular local fish store is closed, and I can get to a big box store and buy something that I need. Airline, air stones, dechlor, something weird, or some kind of medication, and I rush over to the big box store, and I always look at the fish as I go by just to see what they've got in stock. And sometimes I'll see 3 or 4 healthy looking lemon tetras in a tank looking like they're lost and for all the world like they're about to lose it because they're not in a shoal of 20 or 30. And so I'll buy them and bring them home and quarantine them and then add them to my group. You know, I tend to rescue tetras from situations that I feel like, 1, they're healthy, and 2, they're what I want. You know, I'll see them and think, I got to save those fish. 1-inch black veiled tail angelfish for $2.29. Yeah, I would agree with that price. I think at 1 inch, if you've got a local breeder that's selling tons of angels to your local fish store, they'll price them cheap. I mean, the difference between a 1 inch and a 3 inch is a lot in food cost. Michael Ted says, Dwayne, I got a problem with my, is that Apisto eggs fungusing up? I have a pair that spawns all the times, but the eggs don't make it. They are in a 55-gallon community I have. He has a 5-gallon. Hey, Heather, welcome to the stream. He has a 5-gallon to move them to. Yeah, Michael, how long have those opistos been spawning for you? What I'm getting at is how much experience do they have as parents? If you have a problem with them eating all the eggs, it may be that they've fungused up, and the parents eat them because they're fungus to get them away from the ones that aren't fungused. My recommendation, and there may be other better recommendations, but I go from what I've known all along, Michael, and that is to use, oh gosh, methyl blue. Isn't that what I'm thinking of? Methyl blue. Getting old is terrible. You can't. I had the name in my head a second ago, and now it's gone. I think it's methyl blue. I may have the methyl part wrong. It's a dye product that works very well at killing fungus. So anytime you see somebody that has, like if you watch Michael's Fish Room, if you see that he has removed a piece of slate, methylene blue, there you go. I would highly recommend using a methylene blue solution in a tank to keep fungus down. I mean, the honest truth is it's the parent's job to keep the fungused eggs from transferring the fungus to the other eggs. It's hit or miss. Sometimes they do it well, sometimes they don't do it well. I mean, you've got to start with really good water conditions. There can't be a lot of food, excess food in the tanks. So you want to first start with excellent water condition. Make that water as pristine as you can without making it so sterile that the fish die. Then give your parents a long time to work out what it is that they need to do to keep those eggs alive and viable. And then 3, if even after all of that, the parents cannot produce viable young and raise them long enough to give them a chance to become adults and move away from the parents, then I would recommend giving those parents a rock to spawn on or a cave to spawn in. And once the spawn is obviously viable, thanks for stopping by, Corona Ken. And welcome, Rob, an aquarium cop. Once you've removed all other possibilities for why those eggs are still getting fungus in the parent's tank, then set up a system with a rock, a specific rock or a cave. Let the parents breed in it. Once you're sure the eggs have been fertilized, the male starts guarding them, then pull that cave. I mean, you might even just leave the father in the cave and put it in the methyl blue tank, and like everybody's saying, some good water flow. A lot of times people will put them in egg tumblers to give them a lot of water flow. A lot of times people will put an air stone just under the eggs slightly off to one side, so that the bubbles aren't brushing the eggs, but that the bubble wand is producing a flow of water across the eggs. Methylene blue, yes. I know that there are other products that you can use that, I'll call them newfangled products that have been developed since I was using a lot of methyl blue way back in the day. I found that most of the time when I had a problem with eggs fungusing, one, the parents weren't taking good care of them, and two, it was a tank that was dirty because I was trying to overfeed or I hadn't kept up with my maintenance. I was down to like every 2 weeks I was changing the water, and that's all it takes is just enough to allow things like fungus to start to get out of control. You don't see it on the rocks and the plants and the other stuff in the tank, but it'll hit those eggs hard. So one, water parameters. Two, give the parents a chance to mature and get better at parenting. And then three, if you still can't get them, or if you've already done all that and they're still fungusing, pull them, put them in another tank, Airstone for water flow and methyl blue to treat. Or if you find some other product that other people recommend, then you might try that other product too. All right, let's do as most of you know, I'm doing 500 ways to be a better freshwater fish keeper. I'm recommending the book. I think it's pretty cheap if you find it online. Yeah, but we had methyl blue back then. Malachite green was more for treating fungus on fish, and a copper penny was more for a generalized treatment of just adding the copper penny in just for there to be a certain amount of copper in the tank. Of course, back then I didn't have a lot of invertebrates, and copper is dangerous for invertebrates if it gets to a certain, content in the water. Like if you were to throw a copper penny in a shrimp tank, you might have some problems out of it. Of course, these pennies they're making these days, there's probably not enough copper in them to hurt anything, or to do what they need to do. Rob, I know there are people that think that salt is one of the best things to use in the world. I'm not really one of those, and it's because I believe that the osmotic change that you shove your fish through by suddenly salting a tank that had no salt in it, and then later taking all the salt out of the tank, is detrimental in some cases. Probably with more fragile fish, that would be more of a thing. But there's obviously fish that really use salt well, that salt really helps them be more comfortable. If you've got highly stressed fish that are going through some kind of issue, like maybe you're trying to treat ick the old-fashioned way of turning up the temperature to 80-something degrees, then adding a little salt to the tank might help those fish get through that. But I've always stayed away from adding salt. The main, hey G-Bear, welcome to the stream. The main use I have for salt is when I break down a tank and I want to clean that tank and it's got some kind of scale or some kind of, you know, algae or something on it that's real heavy, I'll take some rough aquarium salt and wet a rag and dump that aquarium salt on that rag, and I will use that to scrub to give myself something rough to knock it. And Rob is saying salt for the eggs only, no fish in the tank to fight fungus. Okay, well, that's not something I'm aware of or that I remember, Rob, but I won't argue. I won't argue that point. Laura, thanks for your time in the stream, and we'll look forward to you being in the lurker mode. Okay, I was going to do... G-Bear says, I still have bottles of copper power plant and regular. Nothing better for a dip. Yeah, now a salt dip is probably a really effective thing. You know, you can do a fairly salty solution in a 5-gallon spare tank. You've pulled some of the tank water out and put it in a 5-gallon during a water change. Add salt to that, then net your fish, set them down into the salt, set them down into the salt dip tank for a little while, and then pull them out and put them back in their regular tank as soon as they show signs of stress, because they probably will. I think that, you know, Epsom salts help with digestion in a tank. It helps the fish pass worms if they've got worms in their gut. But I've just never been a big fan. Using things like malachite green and salt and those sorts of things as a dip can really do the trick sometimes. You'd be surprised what a dip in something like that will do. Sometimes it will cause all of the offending fungus, the offending parasites, the offending whatever, viruses, whatever it is. Sometimes a good dip will really help your fish. So that's probably one of the undersung weapons that we have in our arsenal as fish keepers, is using a dip. And thank you, G-Bear, for bringing that up. All right, I'm going to go for yeah. A tip from this book. Here's an interesting one. Tip 135. And this is in the Better Aquarium Plants section. Tip 135 is the benefits of heating the substrate. If you cannot or do not wish to use undergravel filtration, a heater cable, 50 watt or greater, will have a beneficial effect in the aquarium. It will help to prevent long-term chilling and stagnation of the substrate, which leads to general degradation and foul gases. However, while underfloor heaters help, they can be difficult to find and seldom produce enough convection to prevent stagnation. A little extra spring cleaning with a gravel cleaner is always necessary. And that's something that I don't have a lot of experience with, is undergravel heating. But I have heard a lot of people talk about undergravel heating helping plants and to help the substrate from building up problems, because as the heat rises, it pushes stuff, the water flow pushes stuff back out of the substrate. Okay, G-Bear says, diatom algae is kicking my butt. First time in 30 years. Just out of nowhere. Thick brown algae covering my tank. Well, G-Bear, as I'm sure you know, diatom algae is usually one of the first things that infests a fish tank. When you're first maturing a fish tank, you get the diatom algae, and then usually that goes away and green algae takes over. And then you've got a mature tank, usually by the time you've got some green algae growing in your tank. The best thing I know to get rid of diatom algae is autocinkless catfish. Heather, I think you will enjoy the book. I think that it will make you think about some things, and it will give you something interesting to go back and check again later on to see if those tips, you know, Firefly Publishing pays me nothing. I'm sure that they would probably give me a hard time if they were well aware that I was using tips out of their book regularly on a live stream. I have no profit involved with anything that I do on YouTube. I do not monetize anything. I don't try to run ads. So I can't see as they would actually have a case, because I am not using their information to make a profit. But I know that there are copyright issues with actually using information out of a book in a sense like I'm doing it. So I hope that their sales of this book counteract my G-Bear says that he has Severums and clown loaches in his tank, and he thinks the autos would just be snacks. You might be right there, G-Bear. They might be snacks. Other than a lot of scraping, maybe you could try some large apple snails. You could I'm trying to think of ways that you could, cut back on the amount of food. That will probably cause the brown algae to go away. Cut back on the amount of light. Have you changed? Cobweb says it's available from Amazon secondhand for a penny. So yeah, I'm going to guarantee to you that there will be one tip in that 500 tip book that is worth that penny and the shipping that you pay for it. So I would say, I would highly recommend that anyone that can find the book available for a penny, used or otherwise, buy it right now and add it to your fish keeping arsenal library, because who knows when you'll have some issue G-Bear says it's driving him crazy and that he thinks he tossed the balance of his tank by using ChemiPure. Well, if you were using ChemiPure, then that says to me that you were having high nitrites issues, and that you wanted to use the ChemiPure to clear those issues up. And both of those issues are indicative of something in the tank, leftover food or something. Somebody is not eating what they usually eat, and that you're feeding it, and that it's going uneaten, and that it's causing you to have an issue. I mean, I'm not trying to disparage your maintenance skills, G-Bear, at all. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of an issue where suddenly brown algae is an issue 3 years into the maturity of a tank that's long ago gone past the early stage of maturity where brown algae always is a free sample of Chemi Pure. Okay. Well, let that be a lesson to you. Man, the only thing that I can really say is just leave your light off for a week and see if that knocks it back. You don't have to have the light on. Plants will do all right with just ambient room light. Yeah, cheap fish food can cause it too. Rob's right about that. So that might be something worth looking into. If maybe your food has changed its Michael adds that Northfin is great food. That's not cheap food. You're not going to have issues with Northfin unless Northfin suddenly started adding some kind of filler that I'm unaware of. Northfin's about as good a food as you can buy, really. It's too expensive for my blood in some ways. But, if you're a African cichlids keeper, that's a great food to feed. And yeah, I would recommend it. Michael says that his second generation female Apisto isn't as good of a cleaner as my original. She doesn't wave her body at the eggs like the old one did. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, is maybe you've got parents that just aren't doing a very good job. Here, let me look something up real quick. Sorry, I'm web searching here, so you're going to have to forgive me for a second. I'm looking for a website. All right. I recommend that you go look these guys up. Apistogramma idiots. They are two of the most knowledgeable Apisto people that I have ever been around, in the sense of reading what they do, reading the books that they put out. Those two guys know Apistos up one side and down the other, and they may be able to give you some kind of information. I would recommend getting a hold of them and talking to them, or checking out some of their books, or checking out some of their blogs, because those two guys know more about Apistos than any two people I'm aware of. They've got some of the best Apisto books. One of them is a PhD, I believe, and another one is just an idiot about Apistos. collects every kind of apisto he possibly can. They also raise, breed and raise. G-Bear says he's doing small, constant water changes a week. Oh, G-Bear, you're on well water. Well, it probably wouldn't hurt to go get your well water checked and see if you've got some kind of fungus issue in your well water. Because most people that are on wells feel like they're immune to water changes, like most of us are that are on public water. We have to worry about our water changing suddenly on us. It can happen to people on wells too. It's less likely. It's not like hey, Danny's Aquariums, welcome to the stream, man. Danny, we're generally talking about whatever you guys want to talk about today. Yeah, well water is much more steady than our normal water company water is, because they keep dealing with all kinds of issues and have to keep treating the water one way or the other. Rob Hicks says water change helps a lot. 20-30% at most. Yeah, I agree with that. Unless the issue is the water itself. How much water change we do in our tanks? 4 new tanks, Danny? Wow. You're going to have to talk to us about that. How much water we change in our tanks is one of the most varied things out there in the hobby. There are people that will tell you to do nothing less than an 80 or a 90% water change every 3 days. And there are people that say you're better off to do 20% every 4 days than you are to do 90% every 3 days. It's obvious that we as fish keepers are keeping our fish in a tiny water volume compared to the wild, unless it's like a killifish, because killifish live in puddles in the wild. So for a killifish, maybe this is a great amount of water that they're in. They're used to jumping out of streams and surviving in puddles. G-Bear says he thinks it's as well. Yeah, I would figure out some way to get your well water tested by somebody. If you've got a local university that has some kind of science section in it, I would recommend talking to the people there, finding out if someone there does enough water work that they would be able to effectively test exactly what's in your well water and what microorganisms are in your well water. And some kid that's studying microorganisms in water might love to look at your well water and tell you what it is and do testing otherwise on the same sample of water. And even if they were to charge you some small amount, say $30, it would and there's Rob saying that he does 50 every 6 weeks. And see, Rob, that's it. You just don't really, there's so much varied information out there, so many people telling you so many different things that you just really don't know where a good break-off point is. I'm pretty much doing a 20 to 40% water change per week in my tanks. Sometimes it varies a little. Sometimes I'll slip and not do my change on time, and it stretches out into a week and a half. But yeah, it's just, there's just, they're just, what works for you with your schedule, with your lifestyle, and still manages to make your fish thrive. If your fish aren't thriving, then you need to do something different. If your fish are thriving, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, So, I mean, mainly what we're doing water changes for is to prevent old tank syndrome, the slow creeping up of nitrate poisons and nitrate poisons in your water. Fish can adjust to it going up very slowly over a long period of time, and you get a highly concentrated amount in the water before you ever really see any signs from your fish that they're hurting. They don't outwardly usually show signs. So if you let that happen and then you suddenly do a 80% water change, you're likely to kill all the fish in your tank because of how big the change is. Well, G-Bear, I would recommend getting a hold of Marist College and talking to them about it. Joel, thanks for stopping by, man. Have a good weekend. Rob says, yeah, I'm really lazy and I have 2 filters and I let the tank look bad before I change it. I'm also taking the 55 with 12 fish in it on a fish feeder on it so I don't overfeed. Yeah. Yeah, well, Rob, you can get away with being a lazy fish keeper some, but watch old tank syndrome. Check your water before you do a huge water change and see to it that you're not going to kill your fish by dropping 100 ppm nitrate down to 20 ppm nitrate in one fell swoop in a water change. That's what old tank syndrome is. The nitrates and the nitrites slowly build up in the tank to reach a point where they're really toxic, but the fish have had a chance to adjust slowly to that toxicity. Michael asked me, Dwayne, are you more likely to get into shrimp or live bears? And Michael, my well thought out response to that question is yes. I'm likely to get into shrimp and live bears. I've got endlers. I've got Lucas Brett's rainbow tiger endlers, tiger rainbow endlers, and I've got lots of shrimp from Lucas. I've gotten shrimp from Rob before. Yeah, I love big fish. I just don't feel like I've got the wherewithal to really set up a 200-gallon with a pair of hey, down the wormhole, welcome to the stream. I miss having big fish, G-Bear, but I'm going with smaller fish. I'm enjoying my foray into keeping tetras, dither fish, and plecos, loricard plecos, and some interesting ones. These monogrammas on the background, teleocyclas. That's my big fish right now, is my teleocyclas. Yes, Michael, Lucas is an excellent breeder of shrimp, and you're lucky you got some Blue Dreams because he sells out of them so fast. Rob says, I have TDS and strips, so I check for change all the time. Yeah, any large change of any sort is not good for your fish. You know, we were talking about dips earlier. If you set up a dip tank and net your fish out and drop them in that tank and leave them in that salt dip or malachite green dip or whatever it is, period, and don't put them back in their other tank, that's going to be a huge change for them over a period of time. If you take them and dip them, and then as soon as they show any sign of stress, pull them out in 10, 15, 20 minutes, put them back in their regular tank, that's not a huge change for them. It just kind of hits them and then comes back off again, so they don't really go through all the stress. Hey, David, welcome to the stream, man. We're just generally shooting the whatever today. Michael says, I got some of Lucas Brett's Gossip Rainbows. And G-Bear says he's jelly. I'm jelly too. Those are some beautiful fish. Good luck on keeping them going and breeding them so that you can ship all of us some later cheap. All right, guys, we're rounding the bend of the hour. I appreciate all of you coming and spending some of your valuable time with us here online. I would highly recommend that you check out the people in this live stream. Check out their YouTube pages, and check out their sites. So Nisi, the ultimate lurker. Nisi, thank you so much for lurking in my stream and for allowing me to talk into your ear. And give your better half, Doug of the North, a good hug for me when you get a chance. Cobwebs, thank you for being here, man. Nice, setting up a 40 breeder. I love that footprint of a 40 breeder. All right, you guys, I'm getting on with my weekend, and I want you guys to get on with yours. Get out and enjoy the outdoors a little bit if you can. If not, keep on keeping on.